the free consulting segment of our Open Access to Gurus, Tony and Scott. I did have a quick note from Scott. He did have to step away for a few, but at least at the beginning here, Tony and I will be addressing the initial questions. We have a number of great questions coming in now, but there's still room for a few more. So just enter your questions into the text field of the webinar panel, and I'll be pleased to read them aloud for Scott, myself, or Tony to respond. So first question comes from Sandra. What are your favorite books on predictive analytics and data mining? Let me say that we are going to follow up the webinar session for those who attended with a number of resources, and I believe books are a part of them. There may be other web resources and conferences that we point to. They're good for those learning how to get into the practice. And I don't know how many books we recommend in that follow-up email, but there's definitely a wealth of them that are offered at the back of the course material in the resources section. That said, Tony, do any come to mind? And I'm sure it's probably situational. Do you want to learn about algorithms? Do you want to learn about strategy? But do any books come to mind for any certain categories that you might want to express to Sandra? And Tony, let me check. I don't think I muted you, but you may be muted for the rest of. Yep, I can tell that you're still muted. You may want to hit your unmute button. The system says that you self-muted. And while Tony's looking for the unmute button, I'm sure he'll be with us in a moment. I know that Eric Siegel's predictive analytics book is very popular. It's not one that really goes into algorithms that much. It's more a great number of case summaries, and it's put together in kind of an entertaining way. And I can read any other recommendations that the group has as they come in. And then there are some great data mining books, like I say, that go into either data preparation and various algorithms, although we wouldn't recommend starting there. But like I say, we'll make sure that that's among the links that we send to you after the event. Tony, it looks like you're still muted. I'm going to check on my side here if I can. No, I am unmuted from my side. So if you can look for the mute button and ensure that you unmute so that we can go ahead with the next question. And the next question we'll take from Laura. What level of predictive modeling is appropriate for our internal non-PhD staff to run versus our advanced analytic consultants? So I would say initially, how about pragmatic modeling with good enough models that are fully actionable for your business practitioners, and let the advanced quants continue with optimizing for artificial metrics that win Netflix-type analytic competitions, but ultimately don't fit the problem right, or adapt well to the overall environment, or translate well for leadership, or get adopted by users. So in our experience, the modern tools do a great job at handling the mathematical complexity of analytics. And it's typically not necessary to come up with optimal models for your projects, but to come up with, like I say, good enough models that are applied the right way. And this comes into our scenario with the rocket, that we can build a good enough rocket to certainly get us into orbit, but we better have a clear understanding of our mission. And if we do, then we're going to obtain the kind of metrics. And believe me, just like Tony talked about in his segment, there's plenty enough lift in predictive analytics that will more than justify, as long as you can establish your metrics in advance and understand how you're going to translate the results in terms that leadership can appreciate, and ensure in advance that it'll be adopted by users. It's going to fit well to your environment. So that's really what the modeling agency conveys, is to, like I said in my introduction, to help train existing business practitioners on assuming a successful analytical process end-to-end, and we'll help to design it and then oversee its implementation with standard business practitioners with the right tools. So hopefully that adequately answers the question, and I'm still going here on my own. Scott has not returned, and Tony is still connected, but unfortunately muted. And Tony, if you can send me a text, that'll be helpful as well to understand if we can. Oh, looks like you just unmuted. Are you back with us, Tony? Tony, your
Yeah, I
icon now
think
is
I'm back
unmuted.
with you. Sorry, I had some. Can you hear me?
Yep, you are with
Eric?
us now. Yes.
Great. My apologies. I was having some technical issues on this end.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like you came back in through Skype, but we're catching you in pieces, and you are indeed reconnected. Did you want to add to the question for Laura? Did you hear the question itself and my beginning response? Anything you'd like to add to Laura's question?
I did not. I had my line dropped, and I had to go to the backup and call back in. So if you would repeat the question, please.
Sure. Laura asks, what level of predictive modeling is appropriate for our internal non-PhD staff to run versus our advanced analytic consultants? And so my response was around pragmatic modeling for the business practitioners, and if their advanced analytics professionals hadn't stopped concentrating on artificial metrics and R squared, then their business practitioners can actually get a lot further if they have a solid project definition, is essentially what I covered.
Well, for me, I think it's critical that the business users and the non-PhDs, if you will, get involved in this work in a very significant way, because the biggest problem that most of these projects have is we end up building very good, very technically sophisticated solutions to problems that don't address the real business needs, because the advanced research departments don't understand the problems, they don't have the background, they don't have the knowledge and the heuristics that make the business users experts at making these decisions. They look at data and they apply these sophisticated techniques, but they don't have the business background. In a perfect world, you've got people designing the projects who are the decision makers, who are good at it and trying to get better at it, and they actually build and take the project as far as they can, and then go out looking for some assistance to try and take it even further. And that's when you come into your IT and into your technical quantitative groups. These are business problems. And IT and our quantitative teams support the business, not the other way around.
Great points. Thank you, Tony. Brian asks a question that I think is accommodated by performing a detailed and comprehensive assessment before the project begins. Brian asks, how should a visualization format, for example, like a bubble map or heat or geo, be selected for a given measurement? And I guess there's different visualizations that fit different kinds of problems well, but probably the most important is during the assessment is to ask those who are going to put it into action, including leadership, what's their preferred way to see the information, would be my initial response. How would you answer this, Tony? And you can even answer algorithmically. Scott's not here. If there's a tactical perspective as well that fits, but at least from a strategic perspective, probably the biggest thing that people overlook is to just ask. Ask those who are going to use it. Ask those who are going to evaluate it or approve it. How they want to see the information is probably one of the more important things. Brian asks, how should a visualization format, bubble, heat, or geo, be selected for a given measurement?
Well, and I think it really does have to come back to the business problem and what you're trying to solve. All of these are different techniques for helping us get a better understanding of a very complex environment. That's the real reason we do a lot of this work, and that's the reason we go into data visualization techniques, is you've got every time you add another variable, another perspective on a model, you're adding another dimension. And I don't know about you, but I haven't figured out how to dream in calculus yet. And looking at these multidimensional spaces is difficult. And we've got some techniques that are available to us, and they become very context specific on what we're trying to achieve. That's the real goal that we should be looking at here, is trying to develop that understanding in the specific context of what we're trying to achieve. I can go look at this for one set of performance metrics and look at it as being goal-oriented. I get into social media and these multi-dimensional spaces, and you get all these very elegant, very intriguing graphs. But what problem? I mean, do they answer the question? And I think that's the real key here. It's not and which technology is important, is what question is being asked, and what's the most appropriate way of looking at it that gives us a view that's new and unique and provides information content that helps us make better decisions. And unfortunately, there's no one flat answer for that, but and that's the real issue that we have to talk about.
Absolutely, and I think the right answers are actually derived in the assessment. What is the best way for the organization that the visualization needs to be presented, and those are the right answers, I believe, to really make it effective. Christian asks, how important is the knowledge of statistics in predictive analysis on a scale of 1 to 10, keeping in mind the new software capabilities? And I don't know if you even want to allude to some of the purpose that we have in a course before the Predictive Analytics series called Transforming Data to Decisions, where we don't just look at the statistical aspects, but many of the functional aspects that may need to be considered before going into predictive analytics if there's very little analytical experience before coming into predictive analytics and data mining. So again, Christian asks, what's the importance of knowledge or history or experience in statistics before coming into predictive analysis, especially with, again, what new software can handle?
Well, and Eric, as you know, the Data to Decisions course was designed specifically to fill this gap. A lot of people aren't comfortable with statistics, and it's not that you need a huge in-depth knowledge of statistics, but you need a functional working knowledge on how to apply some of the concepts that come out of statistics to decision making. It's a different way of thinking, and understanding what correlation is and how it's applied to a decision process. It means that there's a relationship in the data. When something happens, we can expect something else to happen, and we can measure how effective that interaction happens to be. And it's just different ways that mathematically of looking at things. You have to know a little bit about a car to be able to drive it. You have to know a little bit about how to read a map to get to where you're going. It's the concepts that are important, and then being able to communicate effectively and ask questions in the right way to the members of your project team that do have more technical sophistication, especially to the business users. That's the key issue, is being able to ask for the right kind of help to help you do a better job, and have the people on the other side who don't necessarily understand your business concerns understand what you're asking for.
Great.
So to answer the question directly,
Yeah.
I would say on a scale of 1 to 5, the typical business user probably needs about a 3 in level of sophistication.
Yeah, that sounds about right from our experience. That's great. Thank you, Tony. Rocky asks, what's here in analytics? And I suppose we would presume that you already have an undergraduate degree in either mathematics or computer science or some form, some degree that gives you a grounding in general analytics. From there, I would say to shadow a senior level consultant who has that strategic focus, who is an experienced project designer. And one thing, I know this is a little self-serving, but truly, as far as I know, the modeling agency's strategic implementation course is the only vendor-neutral course on the market that conveys that orientation of the content. Most other courses really have the tactical approach, which most would perceive to be a standard course in data mining, going over the algorithms, the techniques, what are the trade-offs between accuracy and explainability, how do we overcome limitations of each of the algorithms by, in some cases, combining them and the like. Those are your typical tactical classes, but the modeling agency really has the only strategic approach to predictive analytics, and that's really, as Tony had expressed in his segment, where the majority of projects fall short. It's not because the models aren't accurate enough. So those are a few of my recommendations. Tony, and I'm sorry, Tony, I've been going first on answering these questions and leaving you the rest, but you've been doing a great job with it. Anything to add to Rocky's question about the best way to begin a career in analytics?
Well, I'm going to suggest that, yeah, with some background, obviously, in the techniques, that the real thing to keep in mind is that this is the application of the science to business decision making. I'm going to pretend I'm Scott. I'm going to fill in for Scott here for a second.
Great.
His
Yeah.
metaphor, if you will.
Right.
He talks about people building great pianos. And we've got some exceptional piano builders with great skills and quantitative techniques that can't play the piano because they don't understand the business problem. And what we really need to do is sit down and play the piano and learn how to make decisions in a business environment, and then apply these techniques that we're very good at to making these decisions. That's what we're doing with predictive analytics, is we're solving business problems. We're not just doing math.
Great point, and great metaphor, and I know you've got plenty of them that Scott likes to borrow as well. They're certainly worth trading off within the courseware. That's fantastic. And a few people, and this is a very popular question, we'll wrap up with this one. Will the session be recorded and posted? Since we offer this live monthly, we do not on purpose record and post it. We welcome you to return and get a slightly different presentation each time. The polling's live. We obviously go into the Q&A. Think about what questions you'd like to bring back to a future Q&A session and join us again. So no, we do not record because of that reason. We do invite you back for another monthly one. You can find that at our website /data-mining-webinar, but at about 1/4 we're going to draw this event to a close. I'd certainly like to thank our attendees today for your sustained interest and your active participation, as well as Scott and Tony for your great segments. And Tony, thanks for filling the gap when Scott had to leave. I was hoping he'd return, but you did a great job of filling in for the remainder of the questions that I had initially answered in the Q&A. We'll follow up with an email shortly with some resources and suggestions that will hopefully be useful to you. From there, we'll hope you'll offer permission for us to stay in touch through the Modeling Agency's newsletter and consider joining us at a public training event soon. Remember that the Las Vegas production is coming up quickly, and you'll want to let us know as early as possible if you have a training request in process. You can submit an unofficial course registration online to tentatively reserve your space without obligation or commitment. Thereafter, you can save 20% on your Orlando course series registration if you sign up by December 30th. Now, if you would like to benefit from your early efforts instead of just reducing the bill for your organization, we can hand you up to $200 in Visa gift cards at the course instead for your own personal use. You can select which discount you'd like to receive in the online registration form, and don't forget that your colleagues can join you anytime for up to 30% off. Now, if you don't have a training or travel budget but would like the guidance of a seasoned mentor, you may be interested in the Modeling Agency's Wire Support program. Wire Support is essentially a retainer account that provides remote open access to a TMA senior consultant. Simply open up a Wire Support account, and you've instantly added a wealth of experience and capability to your existing bench without expanding payroll, administrating complicated contracts, or taking elevated risk on larger commitments. We'll get you the answers you want, guide you through it, show you how it's done, implement any data mining tasks you may wish to delegate, and then remain on call until the next time you need us. And meanwhile, when we're not actively working, you're not paying a dime. So a link to the Wire Support description page will be among the resources included in the follow-up email. On behalf of myself, Tony, and Scott, thank you again for attending Data Mining Failure to Launch. Have a very pleasant afternoon, and this brings the webinar broadcast to a close.